So here we have a bit of a summary and just reassuring you that we don't have to freak out and know everything about power theory in the last 50 years. But what is power and how can we talk about power in a useful way? Because power is in everything. And when you're thinking critically about things and you're trying to solve problems that are stuck, it's always about power. So this is an activity that I want to do in class. If we get to it, great. If not, this was an exam question last trimester. Two of the greatest dystopian minds of the 20th century, George Orwell and Aldous Huxley. Huxley. So in 1984, by Orwell, the state controls through fear, surveillance cameras everywhere, the thought police hunting down people who are dissenting, history is rewritten daily, and there's a ministry of truth that manufactures lies, and it's been termed a boot stamping on a human face forever. Okay, so it's control, 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 and violence. But also playing on the mind and creating reality and getting confused. Okay, in Huxley's Brave New World, there's no boot. Citizens are genetically conditioned before birth and they're slotted into castes. There's a drug that's called Soma, which eliminates discomfort on demand. Entertainment is infinite and shallow. Every desire immediately satisfied. Nobody burns books because no one needs to. Nobody even wants to read them anymore. So people surrender their freedom voluntarily, cheerfully, in exchange for comfort. So Huxley wrote to Orwell, who was his French teacher, and he said that your boot on the foot model is unsustainable because if you have to use violence, you're going to have resistance, and you're going to have martyrs, and it's too costly. You can't sustain it. You must make the cage comfortable enough that nobody looks for the door. It's just as easy to satisfy your lust for power by suggesting people into loving their servitude as it is by flogging them or kicking them into obedience. So the question I asked in the exam was that can you see either or both of these dystopian worldviews happening in society and give examples? So think about it. Last time I ordered a pizza to be delivered, I thought, oh, there's my Soma. I'm hungry. I want pizza. Bring it to me. Okay, so we've talked in this workshop about seeing the power that we might not have seen before. And we might not have recognized it. We might not have had the language to talk about it. And we just might have taken it for granted, which is the idea of 3D power. So now we can talk about it with credibility because we know the theory, and with insight because we've studied some examples, and now you can go out and try and see different types of power in the world around you. So what is power? It was a really important step forward by Dahl when he said power is relational. It's between actors. You can't say I have power and you don't, because it depends. Do I have power? I might have a power over you, but I might not have power over that person over there. It's not fixed in a role. It's not fixed in an institution. It's not fixed in a person. It's relational. It's constructed. It's legitimized by real people. However, most of the time it feels like it's real. So we say things like that person's got more power, or that person's got power to do that. And that is a normal thing to say. It becomes real when it's treated as real, which is the most common way. And certainly the consequences of power are real. So how can we reconcile this so that we can just have an easy conversation about it? We can use some of these this language here. It's a bit more specific, but it's also quite comfortable and intuitive. Like instead of saying they have power, you can say they have resources of power. They use their power, they exercise their power, either one's fine. The legitimization of power, rationalization plus justification. People can abuse power. There's also balance of power. If the power relation is quite even, you've got a balance of power. And power relations are just an analysis of all the different dimensions of power resources that are available at any one time. So we won't say they have power, we'll say those other things. They have resources of power. They have agency, whatever it is. It is a myth that power is negative. Power is non-normative. Power is value neutral. It's not inherently positive, negative. It's not inherently right or wrong. We need power to do things. Nevertheless, we do judge when people use power. We judge the legitimacy of that exercise of power, and we judge the legitimacy of what they have used their power to do or achieve. And that depends on our perspective and the norms of society. Power represses and controls, but it also enables, depending on the political lens. Okay, power and resistance are not different things. They're the same thing, just on opposite sides of a narrative, let's say. When you learn organizational behavior, they say resistance, like that's a really bad thing. You don't want people to resist when you're doing a change project. But, people have their reasons for resisting. Labeling one thing power and one thing resistance, that's a value judgment. That means that these people with power, they're the right, and the people who are resisting, they're wrong. That's not necessarily true. When I look at climate activists or, people asking for fair human rights for everybody, I would say they're the resistors, but they're all, in my opinion, they're on the right side. You might have a different opinion or position, let's say. Balance of power, I would say the sum of all the resources of power available to this person and their capacity to exercise them in this situation relative to somebody else. Power relations often seem like they're fixed, but they're not necessarily. People instinctively act to shift the balance of power in their favor, and crisis and disruption can make power more visible, can make structures of power, can make the cracks in the ontological security more visible, and which means that challenges to power relations also can create crises or disruption. In my last trimester, a group did a project on the social media ban in Australia, and what they said was Anthony Albanese had the most resources of power, or he had the most power, and parents had the next amount of power, and kids had almost no power. And I did have to challenge them because I said, it depends what you mean power to do what. Albanese had the power to make the law banning under 16s from using social media, but the kids have the power to still do it. And Albanese has no power to stop them doing it. 85% of kids are still using social media. So, and parents, I think, probably have the least powerful. I think the most power sits with the social media companies for how they create their. But it depends again, the power to achieve what, the power to do what, to make the law or to get around the law to use social media. And lastly, go back to the beginning where you did your reflection, I hope, on a time that you felt powerless. Have a look at it now that you've been through the 4 dimensions and think, what was really going on here? What dimensions of power were in play? Was somebody abusing their power? Did I have agency I didn't see at the time? Did I have choices I didn't see at the time? So you can spend a little time reflecting on that.